Some accounts say he burned himself on a funeral pyre, his heart rising to become the morning star. Others say he set sail on a raft of serpents across the sea, promising that one day, in a year of Quetzalcoatl, one wreath, he would return to reclaim his throne. The history of central Mexico is not merely a chronicle of dates and conquests. It is a tapestry woven from the iridescent feathers of the quetzal and the cold-shaped edge of obsidian. At the center of this intricate design stands Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a deity so complex, so pervasive, and so tragic that he transcends the boundaries of mere mythology to become the very soul of the Aztec world. To understand Quetzalcoatl is to understand the paradox of the Mexica people, a civilization that reached the heights of poetic philosophy while simultaneously descending into the depths of ritualized bloodletting. The name Quetzalcoatl is derived from the Nahuatl words Quetzali, the precious green feathers of the resplendent Quetzal, and Coatl, serpent. This etymology is not accidental. It represents the ultimate synthesis of opposites. The serpent, crawling upon the dust, represents the terrestrial world, the physical reality of the earth, and the cycle of mortality. The feathers represent the celestial realm, the wind, the breath of life, and the aspiration toward the divine. In the Aztec mind, Quetzalcoatl was the bridge between these two worlds. He was the god of the wind, Ejecatl, the morning and evening star, Tlahuizcalpantecutli, and the patron of craftsmen, priests, and learning. While other gods in the Aztec pantheon, such as the fierce Huitzilopochtli, demanded the heat of the battlefield and the beating hearts of captives, Quetzalcoatl was often remembered as a god of the interior life, of the arts, the calendar, and the cultivation of maize. He was a wild Tezcatlipoca, one of the four sons of the primordial creator couple, Ometecutli and Omecihuatl. His existence was defined by his eternal rivalry with his brother, the Black Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror. This cosmic struggle between the two brothers, one representing light, order, and creation, the other representing darkness, chaos, and destruction, drove the Aztec cycles of time, known as the Five Suns. The Aztecs believed they lived in the era of the fifth sun, a world that existed only because of Quetzalcoatl's profound sacrifice. According to the legend of the suns, after the destruction of the previous four worlds, the gods gathered in the darkness of Teotihuacan to create a new humanity. Quetzalcoatl's role in this creation was both harrowing and heroic. He descended into Mictlan, the underworld, to retrieve the bones of the ancestors from the Lord of the Dead, Mitlantecutli. This journey was a descent to the subconscious of the universe, a path fraught with trails and trickery. When Mitlantecutli attempted to prevent his departure, Quetzalcoatl stumbled, breaking the ancient bones into pieces of varying sizes. This, the Aztecs whispered, is why humans come in all shapes and statures. To give these dry bones life, Quetzalcoatl performed the ultimate act of Masehualistli, merit through sacrifice. He bled himself over the remains, mixing his divine essence with the remnants of the past. Thus, humanity was born, not as masters of the earth, but as those deserved into life by the gods. This depth of blood became the foundational logic of Aztec society. Because a god had bled for them, they were eternally obligated to return that vitality to the cosmos. One of the most fascinating aspects of Quetzalcoatl is the blurring of the line between the divine and the historical. The Aztecs looked back with profound nostalgia to the city of Tolan, Tula, the capital of the Toltecs, whom they considered their cultural ancestors. In the chronicles, a figure emerges, Seacatl Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl, a priest king who ruled Tolan with wisdom and peace. This historical Quetzalcoatl was said to be a reformer who opposed human sacrifice, offering instead butterflies, birds, and jade. He was a paragon of the Toltecayotl, the Toltec way of refined living, artistic mastery, and spiritual discipline. However, the myth tells of his downfall at the hands of his brother Tezcatlipoca. Using mirrors and fermented pulque, Tezcatlipoca tricked the pure king into drunkenness and disgrace. Shamed, Quetzalcoatl fled Tolan, traveling toward the land of the black and red, the east. Some accounts say he burned himself on a funeral pyre, his heart rising to become the morning star. Others say he set sail on a raft of serpents across the sea, promising that one day, in a year of Seacatl, one wreath, he would return to reclaim his throne. This legend would eventually haunt the halls of Tenochtitlan, casting a long, prophetic shadow over the reign of Moctezuma II. By the time the Mexica founded Tenochtitlan in 1325, Quetzalcoatl was already an ancient deity, inherited from the ruins of Teotihuacan and the legacies of the Toltecs. The Aztecs were an upwardly mobile people, and by adopting Quetzalcoatl, they were claiming legitimacy. To be a civilized empire, they had to be the heirs of the feathered serpent. In the sacred precinct of Tenochtitlan, the temple of Quetzalcoatl stood as a circular structure, a departure from the sharp rectangular pyramids of the other gods. Its round shape allowed the wind, Ejecatl, to blow freely around it, symbolizing the god's pervasive and invisible power. The Aztec elite, the Pipiltin, were educated in the Calmecac, schools dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. Here, they learned the flower and song, in Xochitl, in Cuicatl, the Aztec metaphor for art and philosophy. They were taught that the world was transitory, a dream or a painting by the giver of life, and that only through the creative act could one touch the truth. In this capacity, Quetzalcoatl was the god of the intellect, the patron of those who sought to understand the complex mathematical rhythm of the cosmos. Quetzalcoatl was inextricably linked to the Aztec obsession with time. As the morning and evening star Venus, his movements were tracked with a precision that rivals modern astronomy. The Aztecs recognized the 584 days synodic cycle of Venus and synchronized it with their 260-day ritual calendar, Tonal Powali, and their 365-day solar calendar, Xiu Powali. This was not merely science in the secular sense, it was a form of worship. The reappearance of Quetzalcoatl in the dawn sky was a reassurance that the universe was still in balance. The complex mathematics of the Aztec calendar, which accounted for leap years and long-term celestial alignments, was considered a gift from Quetzalcoatl. He was the lord of the sun's path, the one who ensured that the celestial gears continued to turn. The year 1519 was a year of Seacatl, one wreath, in the Aztec calendar. The very year prophesied for the return of Quetzalcoatl. When news reached Moctezuma II of towers, ships, floating on the eastern sea and men with pale skin and iron garments, the emperor was thrust into a theological crisis. For centuries, historians have debated whether Moctezuma truly believed Hernán Cortés was the returning god. While some modern scholars argue this was a post-conquest narrative designed to justify the fall of the empire, the cultural context suggests a more nuanced reality. The Aztecs lived in a world of omens. A comet had recently strayed across the sky, the temple of Huitzilopochtli had caught fire, the weeping woman, La Llorona, was heard crying in the night. To Moctezuma, the arrival of the Spaniards was not just a military invasion, it was a cosmic disruption. If Cortés was indeed Quetzalcoatl, then the age of the fifth sun was ending. The paralysis of the Aztec leadership in the face of the Spanish advance was not a lack of courage. The Mexica were among the world's most formidable warriors, but a profound existential dread. They were fighting a war not just against men, but against destiny itself. The fall of Tenochtitlan in 1521 did not end the reign of the feathered serpent, it merely transformed it. The Spanish friars, tasked with converting the indigenous population, were stunned by the parallels between Quetzalcoatl and Christian theology. Here was a god who was born of a virgin, Chimalman, who preached a message of morality and penance, and who was associated with a cross like symbol, the four directions of the wind. In a desperate attempt to reconcile these worlds, some colonial chronicles proposed the St. Thomas theory, suggesting that Quetzalcoatl was actually the Apostle Thomas, who had traveled to the Americas to preach the gospel centuries before the Spanish. While historically baseless, this synthesis allowed the indigenous people to preserve the memory of their god under the guise of Christian hagiography. The image of Quetzalcoatl evolved from a feathered serpent into a symbol of Mexican identity, a bridge between the indigenous past and the mestizo future. He became the plumed serpent of D.H. Lawrence and the inspiration for the muralists like Diego Rivera and José Clemente Orozco, who saw in him the spirit of an American Renaissance. Beyond the temples and the blood, the most enduring legacy of Quetzalcoatl lies in the philosophy of the Tlamatinime, the wise men. These thinkers, influenced by the cult of Quetzalcoatl, grapple with the ephemeral nature of life. They wrote, "Is it true that one lives with roots on the earth? Not forever on earth, only a little while here. Even if it is jade, it cracks. Even if it is gold, it breaks. Even if it is quetzal plumage, it tears apart. Not forever on earth, only a little while here." This Quetzalcoatlian worldview was one of profound beauty and melancholy. It thought that because life is fleeting, one must live with heart and face, in Ixtli, in Yolotl. This meant developing a stable character and an authentic soul through the pursuit of wisdom and the arts. Quetzalcoatl was the patron of this inner journey. He was the god who encouraged humans to become artists of their own lives. Today, the presence of Quetzalcoatl is still felt throughout Mexico and the world. He resides in the name of the Quetzalcoatlus, the largest flying creature to ever exist. He appears in the architecture of the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, where his stone coils still command a hushed reverence. But more importantly, Quetzalcoatl lives in the Mexicanidad movement and the ongoing reclamation of indigenous heritage. He represents a refusal to let the ancient wisdom of Anahuac be silenced by the passage of time or the trauma of colonization. He is the symbol of a culture that refuses to choose between the earth and the sky, and people who, like the serpent, are grounded in their history, yet, like the Quetzal, are capable of soaring to the heights of the spirit. The tragedy of the Aztecs was that they lived at the intersection of two conflicting visions of the divine: the solar violence of Huitzilopochtli and the wind-born wisdom of Quetzalcoatl. While the empire was built on the former, its heart always yearned for the latter. Quetzalcoatl is more than a relic of a vanished civilization. He is a universal archetype, the hero with 1,000 faces, who descends into the darkness to bring back light, who sacrifices himself for the sake of his people, and who promises to return when the world is in its greatest need. In the shimmering feathers of his name, we see the aspiration of all human civilizations, the desire to transcend our animal nature and reach for something precious, something green, something eternal. The Aztecs are gone, their great island city buried beneath the concrete of a modern metropolis, but the wind still blows across the valley of Mexico, and as long as the wind blows, the breath of Quetzalcoatl remains. The feathered serpent does not belong to the past. He is in the cycle of the seasons, the movement of the stars, and the creative spark in the human heart. He is the reminder that even in a world defined by struggle and sacrifice, there is always the possibility of flower and song. He is the spirit of Mexico, ancient, resilient, and breathtakingly beautiful. To conclude our exploration, we must look at the transition of the soul. The Aztecs believed that after death, the soul traveled through the 9 levels of Mictlan, eventually reaching a state of rest. But for those who lived according to the precepts of Quetzalcoatl, the artists, the poets, and the wise, there was a different hope. They believed that the soul could be transformed, much like the caterpillar, into the butterfly. This transformation is the ultimate gift of the feathered serpent. It is the realization that the serpent of our physical selves is not a prison, but a vessel for the Quetzal of our spirit. As we look upon the ruins of Teotihuacan or the sun drenched stones of Tula, we are not just looking at the remnants of a dead religion, we are looking at a mirror. Quetzalcoatl, the smoking mirror of his brother's rivalry, reflects back to us our own dual nature, our capacity for incredible destruction, and our limitless potential for creation. In the end, Quetzalcoatl is the story of humanity's search for balance, a search that continues long after the last Aztec priest fell and the last Quetzal feather faded in the sun.